Welcome to Bo Dietl's One Tough Podcast. Boy, I'm glad I'm back on WABC. And one of the things we had Gary Tisler on the show as our first one. And all of a sudden, we got so much traction. It was all about the mayor putting together a charter revision proposal. I've talked to the mayor about this, and guess what? He's putting it there, and I'm scheduled to talk before them in the very near future. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If we don't take this power away from this progressive liberal city council, we're not going to have police that are going to be supported, and we're not going to have the safety that we need in New York. Public safety, to me, is the most important thing. There is more shootings. This is not a perception. But proactive policing. Proactive policing. That's what it's about. When you go there and you stop and question somebody, you can find out he's carrying a weapon, a gun, whatever. And you know what? I've been running a security investigating company for 40 years after I retired. It's one of the most important things is security, public safety. You know, everyone's leaving this city in droves. Businesses are going. The mayor tries to do things in support of the cops, and what happens? He vetoes the stuff that the city council brings out, and all of a sudden the city council, they override his veto. So they're trying to make him powerless. They have some new initiative. They want to take away his powers from appointing a police commissioner. When is it going to stop with this city council? It's got to stop. Here, little stuff, current stuff here. Queens man killed. Double shooting on Queens. 15-year-old boy, gunshot wound to the face. 23-year-old gunshot wound. 84-year-old woman recently beat cancer, wounded with a stray bullet. 1 block away from Herald Square, a 33-year-old man was shot in the leg. It just doesn't stop. And how about this? There was a fight, and a 22-year-old woman was stabbed to death. This is only currently. All right, scooters, where I love. All of a sudden, they began a renewed crackdown on scooters and motorbikes. They're starting to confiscate them. I hope this is not a token thing. This has to continue. We got to go. We got to put license plates on them. We got to demand, if they don't have any license plates or registration, we got to confiscate, voucher these bikes. Every day I'm driving around the city, they're coming at me from all sides. It's a matter of time till more people are not killed by these motorcycles. Here's some statistics. Scooters and bikes are being used citywide to commit crimes. 8,000% spike in moped-involved robberies since 2022. Source 1010 wins. A 19-year-old man suspected of shooting 2 cops in East Elmhurst was charged with attempted murder of 2 police officers he shot. Guess what? He was on a moped. So far in 2024, 13,000 illegal 2-wheel vehicles and ATVs have been seized for a total of 42,000 since the start of 2022. They passed these bills for these mopeds. There's a bill that I'm supportive. It's called Priscilla's Law. Priscilla's Law would require registration and license plates for all e-vehicles so we know who the hell they are. My son, Richard, was run over by one. They ruptured his ACL. He was going to lunch. He had to go to the hospital. This is just one of many. Some people are getting hit by him. When is it going to stop? Also, this is very important. Beautiful Central Park. Since e-bikes were allowed in the park, there's been 250% increase in robberies, and this is absolutely related since the NYPD made it clear that mopeds and e-bikes now are the preferred getaway for crime in New York. Many cases, these were used in Central Park. Current news stories. Here we go. 16-year-old girl was killed, and another was injured in the Bronx. These things just keep going and going. Here's my thoughts. We're experiencing a surge in shootings and criminal activity on the streets of New York City. It's not just perception, it's harsh reality, likely to lead to an increase in crime. New York is losing residents, losing businesses. They're all going away. The quality of life is down. We see it every day. Now, all of a sudden, I'm for legally migrants. I love that. I see families with little kids. I want them to have the American dream. But I don't want the criminals coming from Venezuela and Guatemala that are being influxed into our city. And that's what's happening. When they're not working, what do you think they're going to be doing? They're going to be committing the crimes. They learned them in their own country, and they're going to be committing crimes. More and more people are leaving this city. I'm staying. I'm fighting. But you know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid for my grandchildren and my 2 sons and my daughter and everyone. And I tell you one thing. Why can't the mayor have an executive order? Any illegal immigrant that's arrested on a felony, why can't it be turned over to ICE? I grabbed Governor Hochul. I gave him money. I said, why can't you do an executive emergency order where if someone is arrested on a felony, why can't they be given to ICE? What is the reason behind that? Why do we have to have a person who's illegally here who we didn't even know who they are? Why do we have to keep this going? We have to stop now. I love this city, and I'm going to fight until my last breath, and I'm going to testify before this new commission, because if we don't fight now, there'll be no New York City as we know it. It'll be gone, and we're going down so fast, and the most important thing in my life and in your life, the people of New York, is public safety, and I'll be on board fighting. Please continue to listen to my podcast. My new guys that are coming on my podcast, my guest is going to be the one and only Anthony Scaramucci. Stay tuned to his interview.
Tired of trying diet after diet without results? Mochi Health offers a long-term weight loss solution personalized to your needs. Our board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians provide expert guidance to help you succeed. Eligible patients can access custom-formulated GLP-1 medication at an affordable set price delivered monthly. Take our free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 for $40 off your first month. That's joinmochi.com.
Welcome to Bo Dietl's One Tough Podcast. One great thing, I'm glad I'm back here on WABC, and we have a very interesting guest today. And I don't say it lightly, he's truly like a family member of mine. And we met several years ago when he was doing this thing called Salt, like Salt and Pepper. And he came to my office, and he said to me, hey, Bo, would you ever consider being a keynote speaker for this convention in Vegas? And that was around the time when his friend, President Obama, his friend, said people shouldn't go to Las Vegas. And then all of a sudden I said, sure. And then he went into one of my candy jars, and he took a piece of candy. The candy was probably there from the 1990s. I think he broke his tooth, but that was our beginning of meeting each other. And Anthony and I have been very close with our families and friends, and I don't say it lightly. He's family to me. Today we want to talk about his new book out here, From Wall Street to the White House and Back. It's a great new book, and a little something about Anthony. Anthony Scaramucci, to me, is probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. His vocabulary and every aspect. I've seen him. I've been at almost every one of his SALT conferences, and part of the things, besides me being there, is I listen to him a lot. From presidents to prime ministers to billionaires, anybody you want. He doesn't have any cliff notes. He'll sit there and he'll do an interview for an hour, and he'll know every aspect of the interview. I can't even remember some of my movie lines, Anthony, but you're pretty good. And a little background on Anthony is he's known as the Mooch, obviously because of his last name. And he's got little baby Mooch, Anthony Jr., who I just did a movie with. And he was born in 1964 on Long Island. He was a financier, political figure, media commentator. He got thrown off a couple of media places. He earned a BA from Tufts University. That's one of those joints that you learn good stuff. And he actually has a Juris Doctor from Harvard University. And I believe that he actually went to Harvard along with President Obama. If that's true, we'll get into it. He began his career at one of the great companies, Goldman Sachs, and worked in his investment banking. And then all of a sudden he went over to Berman. And then he started, in 2005, he founded Skybridge Capital, the global initiative investment firm. Also, that's when he began SALT. Scaramucci was a big supporter of Barack Obama in 2008, but became a very vocal support of my friend, and he's a narcissist lion. I agree with you, Dan. I agree with you, but he's still my friend, and I still will be voting for him. And after this interview, I want to talk to you on that basis of what we got to do for the future of this country, because I do look upon you as being part of the future for this country. He briefly served as a fundraiser and advisor to Trump. I think I did introduce you to him. And then he served as a White House communication director under President Trump. I'll never forget, I think I was running for mayor of New York City, and I was down in the Dominican Republic, and I saw you on TV there, and then he threw you out. They asked you to leave after, what, 9 days, 10 days, 11 days?
Yeah, I got fired after 11 days.
Okay, and then, besides that, he was the author from the, I just told you, Wall Street to the White House and back. Hey, how many other books? Tell some of the names of the other books, Anthony.
Well, I've written Goodbye Gordon Gekko. I wrote the little book of hedge funds. I wrote a book called Hopping Over the Rabbit Hole, which is about entrepreneurship, and some books on Bitcoin. But you left out of the story, if you don't mind me bringing this up.
Okay, let's go.
I met you at a time where you didn't know me, or you didn't really meet me. I'm going to tell you where it was. It was at the Deepdale Golf Course, and it was in 2002. It was in
after
spring.
9/11.
And yes, and you brought Rudy Giuliani with you.
Yeah.
And we were raising money for the foundation, the Sandler O'Neill Foundation.
And they lost something like 60 people at the World Trade
They
Center.
lost 66 people, Bo. And you pulled up and you gave a presentation. You brought the mayor with you to talk about what happened on 9/11. I think the mayor at that time had a book on leadership, and he signed it for a number of people. And we had widows there. And we had, retired firemen's wives, deceased and otherwise, living and deceased. And we had some of the children from the 9/11 victims. And so that's 23 years ago. And I'm just going to let you know, the speech that you gave that day was one of the more heartwarming, real, authentic speeches. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I got to get to know this guy better. And so that's what initiated my call to you to get you to come out to our conference.
Well, that's really great. And I think we auctioned off the Rayos table, if I remember. I think they went for 2 tables, 50,000 each, and they really, I knew the guys from Sandler O'Neill also. I had them up to Rayos with me prior to the terrorist attack, along with Ken Langone, who I was just with this morning at the Damon Runyon Foundation. He was honored as Man of the Year. It's a cancer research thing, and he's a great friend of mine. And that was one of the fellas that we mutually, I think, have a lot of admiration for. Yeah.
Who introduced him this morning? Do you remember?
It was that fella. Wow, he had a stroke. Just had a stroke. What's his name?
His name is Leon Cooperman.
Absolutely, Leon Cooperman. Yeah, he was up there. He introduced him, and I'm going to tell you something. The speech that Kenny gave. And when he's mentioned about it's not about money, it's about what you do for people. And you know yourself, $300 million to NYU, $300 million for doctors where you don't have to pay to become a doctor, and then another $300 million. He's quite the he wrote that book, I remember, Capitalism or something. And it's so true, but he's true. Probably one of the greatest American patriots, and Ken Langone is probably one of the greatest people I've ever met. But this is about you now, Anthony, because like I said, you are so articulate all the time, and some of your views I agree with you, and some of the things I don't agree with you. I mean, we could go into the book first, and then we could go to the politics side towards the end, and I could rip you up a little bit. But let's go into the book, why people should read this book.
We'll go over a number before, again, if you don't mind, before we get there, because Lee Cooperman was my boss at Goldman, and he called me last week, and we had a conversation about the speech that he was writing for this introduction this morning.
Yeah.
And of course, they both have given tremendous amounts of money to various hospitals and other great charities. Mm-hmm. These are two men that are quintessentially New York, one from the Bronx, one from Long Island, and both of which built their careers and their success here in this wonderful, amazing city, as have you and I, smaller degree than Kenny and Lee, but it's just an amazing place, Bo. We can't lose the fact that we've been graced by God to live in this city, to be a part of this city. And those guys represent it about as well as anybody. But I'm so blessed to be a part of this city and
Yeah.
the story of this city.
You know, I'm just on an off topic note. I've offered to testify before this new Charter Reform Commission to give the mayor the power back away from the city council on public safety, because every initiative that he puts forth, they veto. He vetoes with the chokehold, the headlock, this, that, wearing this, doing that, and every time he vetoes what they propose, the progressive city council, what they do is they override his veto. And you know yourself, the morale in the police department probably is the lowest it's ever been, and that's one of my things that I'm here. I'm 73 years old. I run a big company, security investigating company. My children, my grandchildren, your kids, everybody, I fear for them what's going on as far as, again, with the immigration. I'm there. This is the American dream. I see women with babies on their back selling fruit. I want them to have this beautiful American dream, but I don't want the criminal element that has come in with them. And we saw it only not too long ago when 2 New York City cops were shot by this Venezuelan who was a criminal, and he was a criminal that was let loose out of one of the jails over there. And this is my thing, Anthony, that I have to try to protect this city. I don't want to become any kind of a police deputy commander. I don't want that. I want to speak for the people, for the families and the people of New York, the black people, the white people, the Jewish people, the Asian people. Everybody in New York should have the right for public safety and feel safe when they leave their homes. And that to me is, I'm on, probably you'll pick up the post one day and maybe something's going to happen with me, but I'm not going to stand back. I'm a fighter, and I'll fight anybody.
Well, listen, I respect all that about you, and I obviously appreciate the job that Mayor Eric Adams is trying to do for the city. But it requires reform, and it also requires us to bring people into the voting pool that are not voting. You know this better than anybody because you once ran for mayor. We have under 1 million people now voting. There's 3.5 to 4 million people that are eligible to vote in the city of New York for these races. And so it ends up getting skewed to the people that are more extreme in terms of the people that are voting. And so this is also hurting the city because their policies are not necessarily reflected in the population of the city in terms of what people want. And you know what they want. They want a clean street. They want a high quality of life. And they don't want to be fearful in the subway. They don't want to be fearful when they're walking.
And the quality of life. When you see these motorcycles, mopeds running down people, they're shooting from them, no license plates on them, no license required. The quality of life brings down the rest of the city and brings that criminal element in there. Oh, look, we could talk about it on a show, but I don't want to talk about it. I want to sell your book because your books are good books. And why should people buy this book?
I mean, look, it's sweet of you to bring me on, but I tried to write a book. So as you know, I've been on Wall Street for 36 years. I've been an entrepreneur since 1996. I've built 2 reasonably successful companies, but I've always had a bent towards politics, Bo. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, but how did I get into politics? I was having a very hard time breaking into the world of wealthy individuals that I needed to get to know to open accounts at Goldman Sachs when I started there. So I was in the high net worth area at Goldman. I didn't know anybody that had any high net worths. I just didn't have that. Even though I went to Harvard, I was a new boy or a young boy in an old boys network. So I really, I've never hit a golf ball or swung a tennis racket. And so I got into politics. I wrote my first check to Rudy Giuliani. That led to me working for Pataki. It led to me working for Bob Dole, George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, and eventually Donald Trump.
No, who's that other guy from Wisconsin? You were sucking up to
Scott
him.
Walker. You and I, you helped me with him. I don't know if you remember that, but you were very helpful. But we also went to the restaurant's not there anymore, but it was by the Bloomberg building. It's a very famous restaurant, Le Cirque. We went to Le Cirque together, and we had a $100,000 per plate fundraiser for Donald Trump. And that was June. So it's now 8 years ago. That was June of 2016. And you came with me to that fundraiser. I don't know if you remember that, but you did. And I worked very hard for Mr. Trump. I raised him, I don't know, 15 or so $million. I gave him $1 million personally. And then I provided hundreds of hours of media advocacy on his behalf on many different networks. When he won, he asked me to be part of his presidential transition team, which I did. And then he asked me to become the White House liaison. There were two guys that worked for him that apparently, they didn't like me. I wish I had known more about that at the time because they were a bit of phonies, but it was Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon. So they blocked me from that first job. And then obviously when Mr. Trump had problems with them, or President Trump had problems with them, he brought me into the White House in June to talk about a potential job. And by July, I was working as the comms director. I had a press conference which went well. I was in the process of reorganizing things. I was fighting with him. I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, there were certain things he was doing that I didn't think were the right things to do.
You learned one thing about Donald Trump. I know him 40-something years. You can't tell Donald Trump anything. I mean, Donald Trump thinks that's part of the problem.
And that's fine. That's why he's got 40 people that work for him that don't want to support him, whether it's Mike Pence or Mark Esper or General Milley, or I could leave you with a list of people that don't want to support him now because of that streak in his personality. But whatever. He fired me. I had no problem with that. I took
what was the actual reason behind that, Anthony? We all joke about it, but how all of a sudden?
General Kelly said that he was not in love with my pushing back something. He said, I think, I knew I was in trouble, but when he called me a deep stater, which I laughed about because I grew up on Long Island. I think my time in Washington was the 11 days.
Oh, he called you a deep stater?
Yeah, he called me a deep stater. Yeah, my time in Washington was 11 days in the White House and maybe 2 school field trips. So I don't know how I could be a deep stater, but that's fine. But I think his point was there were things he wanted to do that I didn't agree with, and I was pushing back on. And I think I pointed out to him once that I taken an oath to the Constitution. Certain things that you want to do, I don't even think they're appropriate. They may even be borderline illegal.
Wow, you actually brought that up to him, Anthony?
I got fired.
You were not like Clarabelle, the spokesman for Biden. What's her name? Clarabelle. She looks like Clarabelle.
No, I don't know her name, but my point is I got fired, took it like a man. For 2 years, I was loyal to him in the administration, never said a bad word about him. I got on the Bill Maher show. And the woman that was interviewing me, her name was Catherine Rampell. She was there with Bill. I was defending Donald Trump. I was defending him on the courts, defending him on policy, taxation, regulation. And then she said, well, what about the women in the squad where he says on Twitter they should go back to the countries they originally came from? All I said, you can look it up on the tape, is I said, well, I wish he wouldn't talk like that. I said, they said that. American nativists said that to my Italian-American grandmother in the 1920s. It really upset her. She was here to work hard to be a loyal American. She put 2 of her children into the Second World War. One is a decorated hero that stormed Normandy Beach. And she really resented people telling her to go back to the country she originally came from. He's the American president. I wish he wouldn't talk like that.
Yeah.
When the show was over, Bill Maher said to me, well, Trump's going to light you up on Twitter tomorrow. I said, oh, I don't expect that.
Did Bill Maher release it to Trump or put it on?
No. It was on the net. It was a live show. Okay. And he said that now you were 7 for 8 for Trump. You got to go 13 for 10, which is mathematically impossible. And so Trump's going to light you up tomorrow. I bet Bill dinner. I lost the bet. By 3:00 the next day, I think I was in one of the cabanas at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Trump started going off on me. And I'm a New Yorker. I'm not Ted Cruz. I'm not going to take nonsense from him. And so I think I called him the fattest president since William Howard Taft because I know he hates being so fat. And then I hit him a few more times after he hit me. And I said, geez, you're really losing your fastball.
Yeah, but hold on, Anthony. You wrote a very nice book about him first, where you gave him all kinds of accolades.
Did you read the book?
Nope.
No. Okay, so you got to read the book because he didn't like the book.
Okay, I'm glad you're clarifying that.
Okay, but he didn't tweet out about it. He didn't like the book. Why didn't he like the book? It was a good book about him. It was a good book explaining the dilemma in the society where we have a blue collar crisis going on in the society. And we have people that were once aspirational, that were blue collar people that now feel economically desperational. But I said that he shouldn't go after the press the way he was going after the press. You're a member of the press now, by the way, just the fact you have a podcast. Press are not the enemy of the people. You shouldn't be going after the press. He has to take a higher ground there. He didn't like it. So yes, I complimented I can compliment him here, even though I'm not going to support him for president. I can tell you what is good about him, and I can tell you what I worry about with him. And I did that in the book. And so he didn't like the book. Okay. And so he got mad at Sean Hannity, by the way, for endorsing the book because it wasn't this overly effluent. It wasn't this overly obsequious nonsense of a book. That's fine. It doesn't matter. I was supporting him until he started attacking my wife on Twitter.
Now, did you mention that? You mentioned that in this book? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't mention it because I don't want to mention it because it upsets Deirdre. But Deirdre and I were having marital problems at the time, well documented by the New York Post. I probably said something to President Trump that I shouldn't have said, but he broke the bro code and he outed that on Twitter, on the presidential Twitter feed. Now, I gave this man $1 million, hundreds of hours of media advocacy. He fired me after 11 days. And 2 years of loyalty after I got fired, he started attacking me on some comments that I made on the Bill Maher show that I didn't agree with him, but I was generally supporting him. But then he goes and starts attacking a civilian. I mean, they don't even do that in the mob. He starts attacking my wife on Twitter. Okay, so this is a lowlife of a guy, and he's not my kind of guy. And so that was it. Once he did that, I said, you know what? You're not my kind of guy. You're never going to be president again, and he won't be president again. And I will work assiduously against you to prevent this kind of nonsense and all this sort of trash permeating the American people, because leadership does matter and character does matter. And this is a very flawed guy. And so I will not support him. But I'll just say this to you, Bo. Don't go after my wife. She didn't do nothing to you, and she didn't even ever say a bad word. Now, she probably hates Trump almost as much as Melania hates him. I mean, and that's like the standard of hatred. Okay, I think very few people can hate him more than Melania.
But this
a few of the generals.
I'm glad you're talking about this because it's clear. But in your book now, you talk about a lot of things. But do you think, you being who you are, do you think that had hurt you? Because once you were so supportive of him, and I didn't read the book, but people would think that. But then all of a sudden, if I'm going to invest $10 billion with your bed, I'm going to say, but what will stop Anthony from turning on? No, I'd like to know this because this is important, because a lot of people talk against you, and I do stick up for you. You're my family, Anthony, and I
talk against me.
But you don't think that hurt you?
No, it doesn't matter to me. That's the great thing about being me. I don't care. Do I think it hurt me? Yes, I think it hurt me. To quote my son, who went to Stanford Business School, he said, "Dad, you hurt my networking opportunities. You left Trump, so the Republicans dislike you. You were with Trump, so the Democrats will never like you. You've killed my networking opportunities." That's fine. You don't go after my family, Bo.
Yeah.
You don't go after my family. You're showing the rottenness of your personality. Okay, and then when you read Project 2025, where they're talking about a post-constitutional America, I love the Constitution. Okay, and I want to stay in the current constitutional America, not the post-constitutional America like all these organized fascists think that are working for Trump. And so for me, I will defend the country in my way, and I'll say what I think. And if people don't like me for that, or it hurts my business, I'm a big boy, Bo. I have no problem with it. And you can leave my business. But if you didn't leave my business, you did very well with me, because Bo, the last 2.5 years have been probably the best performing years of my career. I can't get
like those Bitcoinies. The Bitcoinies did pretty good.
And I've done well with that. But Bo, I've also done well on a number of other things. So if you took the politics out of it and you stayed with me, you got very well rewarded. If you got mad at me because of the politics, I understand that. I'm okay with that. But what you're not going to do, Bo, it's your podcast, but let me tell you something, and it's one tough podcast. You're not going after my family members particularly when you knew I was having marital problems with my wife and you're viciously attacking her on the presidential Twitter feed after I gave you $1 million, hundreds of hours of media support, and 2 years of my life after you fired me. I'm sorry, you're just not going to do that to a guy like me. So that's it. And so you know what? He won't make it to the presidency again. You watch. And then we'll have to work on 2028 when he runs again, which is fine. But he's not going to make it.
When you were going through your tough times, I was around then, and I understand everything. And I do agree with you. You don't bring family into any kind of a dispute. I totally agree. That's the biggest problem. You don't know when to shut his damn mouth.
Is Donald Trump capable of offering somebody an apology?
When I said one thing, I got turned off.
The answer to that is no, by the way.
Okay. When I got turned off was when I was at Steve Ross's house. There was about 30 guys there, all the billionaire, rich real estate guys. I was invited by a bond guy, $250,000 plate. I didn't pay for it. I was a guest. And then he actually gave me the credit, which I was almost fell off my chair, for the Veterans Choice. In other words, when he was running, when he first started to run, I said to him, Donald, if you ever win as president, we got to take care of the veterans, because the veterans are getting kicked aside with the Veterans Administration, with these hospitals. Wait 3 months, sit over there. These garbage can people working there are dictating to our veterans. So he did come, and he actually gave me credit for the Veterans Choice there, where they could go for PTSD, for psychological or medical, and go directly to another doctor. I almost fell off my chair, him giving me credit. As I'm walking out, Anthony, what I said to him? I said, can I talk to you, Mr. President? I said, look, I knew Senator McCain for a lot of years. I says, Mr. President, what do you think about giving his family the Medal of Freedom and say you were wrong? He was not a loser. He was incarcerated for 7 years in the Hanoi Hilton. He's truly an American hero because he didn't vote for this stupid health bill. That doesn't take his character of being a hero veteran away. You know what he said to me? I lost a lot of respect. He looked at me and he goes, Bo, who am I? I go, you're the president. He goes, that's why I do what I want to do. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to say it right now, Anthony, I'm voting for him because I look at one thing. I look at where we are. I have children. I have grandchildren. As bad as he is, when I tell people to vote for him, hold your nose. I don't think he's going to win. I think there's going to be a big surprise at the Democratic convention. And I'm going to tell you first so you could say Bo said it. I think he doesn't run. I think the curtains open up, and I think Obama and his wife come out, and I think his wife runs and gets the nomination, and she'll totally destroy anybody. That's my premonition right now to you, Anthony. And when it happens, you could say, you know what? Bo has a sixth sense, which I do have a sixth sense. This is all set up because he can't run again. It's not, I feel bad for him. He's a man who's very confused, and he can't be the president. The only thing about Trump, he's a narcissist, lying son of a gun, but you got to choose between the two. And right now, if you choose, you got to think about it, Anthony. Your children, my grandchildren, what's the worst of the two? Look how we look around. Look at our economy, Anthony. So in reality,
you're making a simplistic choice. I respect you.
Yeah.
Vote for who you want, but you got to look at the organized fascists that are working for him.
Okay.
Read Project 2025. Read about Red Caesar, how they want to take over the executive branch of the government and bring down and weaken the other two branches of the government. Just read what they're writing.
But you're a lawyer. You're a lawyer. I mean, this prosecution that you watched over with this guy Bragg.
That was unfair.
It was completely ridiculous. But my whole point is, Anthony, right now, if in fact they ran the race, one of them is going to get elected. You, as a very intelligent man, know where we are at the economy, know what's happening around the world. I just had the Marine fella, I did a podcast, what we did in Afghanistan, leaving all those people and all that. My point is, as an intelligent man, Anthony, you can really vote for the fella that doesn't even know where he is against the narcissist.
So if there are two movies playing at your local cinema on Election Day, and one of them's Weekend at Bernie's, starring Joe Biden, and the other is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I'm going with the elderly person over the full-on crazy person that needs lobotomy. I'm just telling you right now.
Well, we can. I love you enough that we can have our own choice. That's what's great about America.
Yeah, here's the thing, Bo. When he's gone, and God willing, evil like that probably lives forever, so he probably outlived me. But if he's gone off the political stage, I'm a center-right guy, and I have a lot of friends that are center-right people, and I will look forward to working with and helping a center-right candidate that's not Donald Trump. But this guy's nuts. He's very bad for the country. He's very bad for your children, Bo, because you don't want your children, you don't want your grandchildren talking or thinking like this man. You just don't. Biden, I disagree with him on policy, but I can deal with a disagreement on policy as opposed to a systemic threat to the country.
Okay.
So I'm with Liz Cheney and Paul Ryan, and I'm with Mark Esper. I'm with the vice president, Bo. He was on the ballot with him. I'm with the vice president of the United States, Mike Pence, and a whole series of people that have seen this guy up close and personal and know how bad he is as a guy. And I don't want him to return to the presidency, and I'll be working against him.
I want to take you for a ride with me.
But maybe he drops out, Bo. You don't know.
I want to take you for a ride with me in New York City and see what this is, what's happening.
We'll go to Randall's Island together. You think I don't know?
And I got my car washed on Jericho Turnpike yesterday, and there were gang members there, and the guy's cursing at me in Spanish. And what am I looking at? Tattoos up the neck, on his face, jail muscles, and I'm ready to get into it, and it's going to be a matter of time. This is what has came and infected our great country. And when you leave a border wide open like that, what we just did, we have some real serious problems. Anthony, I worry about your wife, your beautiful young children, your older children. I worry about people. And in reality, it's going to be a person's choice whether you hold your nose and vote for the narcissist or you continue the direction we're going to go. And that's a people's choice. And I'm going to tell you something.
The Republican Party's really hurt itself. They could have gone with a younger, smarter guy than this. They could have, but they decided
Yeah, because they were afraid of him because he's got that 40% that would go through walls for him, and that's the problem.
Let's see if he ends up being the guy. You may be right that Joe Biden's going to drop out, but let's see if Trump ends up being the guy. Maybe if Trump drops out, you invite me back on. I'll tell you what I'm doing.
Well, I tell you what,
I do love you, Bo, and I appreciate you bringing up my book. And the book is a good book for people that have fallen on their asses and how you pick yourself up after you've gotten your ass kicked in a situation.
All right, we're going to roll it down because
I appreciate it.
And I really, Anthony, I love you, and you have that invitation tomorrow night if you want to show up at 7 o'clock, okay? You know where, okay? I want to thank you, Anthony. Best. And some of these good investments, I still got a couple of shekels left, so bring them to Papa Bo, okay?
All right. I love you.
And Anthony, send my love to Deirdre and the kids and everybody. And I do love your son very much. Your boy's very talented.
I watched your grandson in the movie. He's the star of that movie. Has he showed you the outtakes? Have you?
No, but I'm looking forward to seeing the movie together.
Right, wait till he sees. He's reaching for the toys and the look on his face and the whole thing.
I love you, Anthony.
It's very enjoyable. I love you, man.
And anybody, I'll say right now, my money is on Anthony Scaramucci. I'm talking about financially and also as a person. You're a good guy, but remember one thing. Comes a time when you have to evaluate which road, when you're going to the Wizard of Oz, which road you're going to take.
I'm going with the one that defends my family, Bo. That's what most people would do that are Italian from New York. Go after my wife on your presidential Twitter feed and expect not to get smacked around.
What if he apologized to you?
Well, that's different. Get him, have him apologize.
That's about as much chance as me growing hair. All right, Anthony. Thank you very much. I love you, Anthony. And people from Wall Street to the White House and back, Anthony Scaramucci's book. I didn't read it yet. I read the Cliff Notes, but I'm sure there's a lot of good shit in here. Thank you, Anthony.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.